Well, hello everyone. Terry Maxiner here with Bridging the Gap of Care, resources you need to know for those facing the reality of aging. This week's episode of our video podcast is going to discuss the benefits of home care. As an adult child myself, with aging parents, and any of you out there have always found out the hard way of finding good resources out there. Well, I am pleased to bring to us today one of my very favorite colleagues out there who is administrator of Harvest In-Home Care. And the reason for my selection today, having Tracey come in and talk about in-home care, is because the idea of in-home care runs the gamut. Some folks are getting that confused with skilled in-home care, which takes advantage of a person's Medicare benefit, and I mean taking advantage in a good way. So again, in-home care may be provided in the home for someone who has a non-skilled need. And that person may need anything from assistance 4 hours a day to actually someone living with them. So again, the trust factor comes in really, really well. And what we need to really be particular about is how we go about that. Our older parents may have the unfortunate hospitalization. Something happens and they're not quite the same and they need to come home with some assistance. We want to really make sure that we're making great decisions about who we choose to come into our parents' home or into our home if we're taking care of them there. So I welcome Tracey Abrams. Tracey,
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having
and
me.
Tracey has been just a great asset in my life with some of my clients.
Thank you.
And I welcome Tracey because she has a quite vibrant, professional, wonderful group of caregivers, which my first question always is that folks want to sometimes pick a caregiver over cost. I just want to find someone within a certain price range, and that might be someone who is unskilled, not trained, and is working for themselves. Why is it so important to go with a licensed agency?
Yes, that's a very good question. It is very, very important to go with a licensed agency, basically for liability purposes.
Okay.
And also, you mentioned the caregivers having the training as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I say it's great to actually choose a licensed agency to have a backup plan. I mean, when you're dealing with a licensed agency, you're usually the agency usually has a pool of caregivers that they can select from. So basically, it gives you options.
Oh, okay.
And you get caregivers that are trained. Some of them are CNAs.
Mm-hmm.
For liability, if someone gets hurt at your home, at least you're dealing with an agency that is licensed by the Illinois Department of Public Health. We are required to have insurance, so we have liability and workers' compensation as well.
All right.
Also, you're getting a caregiver that has been fingerprinted and background checked by the FBI and the state police. So we screen our caregivers as well.
So that is really important, and I hope that our viewers and our listeners really understand that. Anyone can come and say that they've cared for their elderly, but how do we know there's not a record or a past with them? Because again, in some of the situations, a caregiver is put in place and it's just the client and the caregiver.
Absolutely.
And we don't know what could happen there.
Yes.
And two, you said also that I think is real important is the training. How much training goes into a typical employee when they come on board with Harvest In-Home Care?
Okay. So basically, we are required by the state for them to initially have at least 8 hours of training.
Excellent.
But we go above and beyond because it basically depends on our actual client and the needs of our client.
Okay.
So what we do is when we actually do a start of care, not only are they doing the 8 hours that are of training that's required by the state, we're actually training them according to our client's needs.
Oh,
if the client has
most
had a
wonderful.
stroke, the client has had has Parkinson's, if they're diabetic,
Okay.
any type of chronic illness, cancer. So we want to train according to our client's needs.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So if a client is coming out with, diabetes or whatever, your caregiver, whether they're a CNA or caregiver, is also being even educated a little bit more on the disease
Absolutely.
process.
Yes.
That is amazing. So, I think the great thing about that is because your caregivers are getting that extra training, they're also learning how to team what can I say, teamwork with maybe a skilled home care agency that's in there as well.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
again, so important because we know how critical that time is. So
Yes.
you know, have seen this client virtually right after the hospital.
Yes.
And I know with your group, Tracey, you had shared with me that your clients have stayed at home very successfully, and you've had hardly any hospitalizations with
Yes.
your clients.
Absolutely. Yes, because usually when they come home from rehab, as you know, and hospitalization, they usually come home with a skilled care agency.
Right.
And like you said, we work together as a team with the home health care agency. So if we start noticing, different signs or symptoms, we automatically know to contact the nurse.
Excellent.
And the nurse will usually, if it's like more urgent, then they'll
Okay.
have us contact their doctor and get them into a doctor's appointment. So we work very closely with the skilled home healthcare agency.
Perfect.
Yeah, as a team.
That is
Yeah.
really good because, again, that skilled nurse is only probably popping in intermittently, maybe one time a week, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, where your caregiver is there on a regular basis.
Yes, and there are things that we notice that they don't. Like if we're bathing
Exactly.
them, we may notice the start of a wound.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That is great.
So,
And that's great that they are having such acute eyes on the situation to know if
Yes.
there's any changes. I think the other thing that some of our listening and viewing audience would want to know is calling Harvest In Home Care. What does the process look like? Does someone come out to the house and visit with my mom, or how does that happen?
absolutely. When they call Harvest, what we do is we actually find out the needs of the client, kind of find out whether if they're in rehab, if they're in a hospital, or even if they're at home.
Okay.
So if they're at home, we can send out our representative or our case manager to actually sit down with the family initially. And we usually try to set, if someone calls us today, we want to see if we can set up an appointment today to meet with this family because we understand the urgency
Absolutely.
of having the care and having someone there as soon as possible, whether they're discharging from rehab, hospitalization, or even
Right.
if they're just at home. Because even if they're at home, the current caregiver, like if it's their daughter, they could be stressed.
Exactly.
So we want to relieve that stress, and we want to act immediately
Right.
when they contact us.
Absolutely. And we want to see that client after they've been discharged succeed.
Yes,
And not have that
absolutely.
rehospitalization.
Yes.
And I think too, as family members, they have that more emotional piece in there,
Yes.
where you guys are coming in as professional, trained caregivers
Yes.
to, again, like you said, sometimes unload that stress that they've been going through, whether or not you are staying with the client for a couple of weeks until they get like kind of what I'd say their feet on the ground and get everything going.
Yes.
Or if you end up being kind of more of a permanent residing with them, like a 24-hour, that's
Yes.
great. So how does that fit go? How would I know that I can get that good caregiver for my mom?
Absolutely. Basically, when we go out, when our case manager goes out or our representative, we really listen to our client.
Oh, excellent.
We feel that the client should be a part of the decision-making process, even if the family says, well, my mom doesn't want it. We always want to make them feel comfortable and make them feel like they're
Perfect.
really a part of this
Exactly.
decision. So we find out what their needs are, okay, and then we match them up with the needs of our caregiver because some caregivers may say, I don't work well with someone that has dementia.
Okay.
Or I don't feel comfortable transferring a client. So we're listening for the needs of this client. We're looking at their discharge paperwork, and then we're carefully matching them up with our care team.
Perfect,
Yes.
perfect. And I think that is such an important, for folks, exactly, I'm thinking maybe first time out of the hospital, new to the whole home care arena, scared, because we've heard all the horror stories. We read them in the newspaper,
Absolutely.
elder abuse or financial abuse or
Yes.
just all kinds of things.
Yes.
And again, I think that's just another thing for our listening and viewing audience to be so reminded of why it's so important to go with a licensed and bonded
Absolutely.
agency.
Absolutely.
And, I know I've seen your caregivers in action. I have been the opportunity with some of my clients, and nothing but pleased and great feedback.
Thank you.
But what are some of the things that really has Harvest In Home Care kind of set apart?
Okay. I would say what really sets us apart is that we take more of a personable approach
Great.
when we're setting up care for our families. Like I said, initially we start out, we want to meet them. We want to sit in front of our clients, listen to them, and find out what their needs are. The other thing that we do differently from other agencies is not only are we sending the caregiver there, they're actually going to have a case manager assigned to the case.
Oh, okay.
And we're supervising it more often that's required by the state.
Oh, that's good
So
to know.
we're required by the state to actually do supervisory visits every 90 days. But with an initial start of care, it's critical that we know that our client is happy, that our caregiver is meeting the needs of the care plan, meeting the needs of the family, that the family is really happy, and that the chemistry is there.
Absolutely.
Because someone is actually coming in your home, someone you don't know, you've never met them before.
I know.
And that chemistry is critical. So we spend a lot of time initially making sure, okay, this is really a good fit, because it's very
Perfect.
important.
And it is, you know, and like I said, I've seen it in action, and I think the hesitancy with families is that I'm just going to expect something awful is going to happen, and it doesn't.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
it really doesn't. So, you know, Tracey, with Harvest In-Home Care, you're located in Plainfield. What
Yes.
service areas?
Okay. We actually cover Cook, Will, DuPage, Kane, Kendall, DeKalb, and also LaSalle. We just added DeKalb and LaSalle. We cover a wide range
You surely
of
do.
territory.
Wow,
Yes.
that is wonderful. And if anyone is wanting to reach out, your website?
Yes. Our website is www.harvestin-homecare.com.
Great. Well, that is good to know. And I know I always send people to the website for, especially if you're looking into a home care agency, you'll get a volume of information about what is happening with Harvest In-Home Care. Tracey is the administrator there, and she welcomes any type of phone calls, even to find out, inquiring why. And I know as Tracey we have talked through this a little bit, preparation is everything. We know things happen emergently,
Yes.
and I know Tracey's team is ready to go within 24 hours,
Yes.
and that is a good. Is there a phone number where they can contact you at?
Absolutely. Our phone number is area code 815-566-5843.
And is that something 24/7?
We are on call 24/7, yes.
That is great. Well, again, I am just really blessed to have Tracey as our guest here.
Thank you.
I think, too, as Tracey's explained, just the importance of home care. Home care is really that make it or break it for that tender time that folks come home, whether it's emergent hospitalization or a subacute rehab. Those first 72 hours, statistics do say, is a time when people can get rehospitalized, either due to the fact of, you know, medication errors or not having the support in the home or wherever they reside. So again, I want to thank my audience for listening. I want to thank Tracey again from Harvest In-Home
you.
Care, and we will see you again at Bridging the Gap of Care. Thank you.
Thank you.